Wow, I feel very welcome. And it's my great pleasure to actually welcome all of you to this meeting this afternoon. Brett has been my long-term friend, but there are some people in the audience that have actually been my friend even longer, like 3 or 4 decades. When Esri first got started, 47 years ago, we were a startup. And I came to Esri and CSIRO and some other organizations around the country gave me work. Real work, and I was paid for my, my academic endeavors, which I appreciated. So it's a great pleasure for me to come back and be with you to share some ideas about where I think our industry is going and tell you a little bit about what Esri is up to with respect to enabling technologies that will help it happen. I like to start this meeting by first turning it around and saying, well, Brett sort of embarrassed me by acknowledging me, but it's actually you guys that should be acknowledged. You're working on all kinds of activities around Australia, and some from New Zealand, as a matter of fact, making a difference in the world. So the technology is an enabling tool. Esri can help you in that regard, but for me, what gets me up every morning, what gets me excited, is the work that you guys do. And I thought I'd start off this afternoon in the discussion talking a little bit about your work and what you do. The work going on in environmental science, environmental monitoring, environmental planning is just profound. All the way from the globe, looking at climate change, to detailed noise analysis, to predicting water quality, like the work being done at Water New South Wales here. You can just glance at some of these efforts. All the way to fisheries data collection using things like collector out in the oceans. These examples show work being done in the energy development. Some of it's classic coal development or oil and gas development, but we're seeing a whole modern approach to generation of energy resources with solar, with renewable resources. And then in the agricultural area, the examples here in the South Australia with being able to use GIS to target where agriculture should be invested in. Or NRM here way out, this is supposed to be a joke, but using GIS to visualize the growth of lettuce. Well, this is pretty good. It's supposed to be a joke, but you guys are not in a humorous mood, I can tell. It's pretty nice work. We're also seeing increased investment in use of GIS in the world of land information management. And the work here by Landgate out west to modernize cadastre, both at the management of the data but also the services work, is amazing. Cadastre is a kind of fabric which we all depend upon. It's kind of the basis for a modern civil society. But we're also seeing with these examples the use of cadastre data in a multi-purpose cadastre, looking at things like valuation as a pattern, giving us insights to communities that we didn't have before. And cadastre is moving up in the world in terms of going 3D cadastre at the condominium level and so on. These examples show the use of GIS for preparing for and then responding to natural disasters, something that is increasingly being showing up on our screens, on our television screens, but also on our GIS screens. The work done here by the Australian government and the Department of Defense is really amazing. The assistance that was given to the people up in Fiji in the Winston cyclone was well known. Even news was shared up in the U.S. about it. And the tsunami impact story map told the citizens of Australia all about the whole concept of a tsunami, how it moves across the ocean, what it impacts. And bushfires, another common thing in California, but also increasingly here, especially in Victoria, is in the news, and maps and GIS are helping us understand the patterns and the relationships and what they mean. In the utility space, leaders such as Western Power or Ergon or well, you know them well here. Intergex is not only looking at asset management, but also looking at outage of power and also looking at interferences like vegetation management and cutting of the vegetation so it stops some of the outages. The examples on the right are showing the future of utilities: smarter meters, smarter networks, smarter 4G telecommunication. And the telecommunication industry is not only seeing these as maps, but they're seeing them as services so they can better assess coverage and effective response. GIS is a very effective tool for transportation. I included these examples because they are so powerful. In the lower left is the US Post Office, which implemented GIS last year and saved $200 million in better optimizing delivery of the mail. And I guess yesterday I was in a circumstances where I really wished I'd had that one in the middle, trying to find a parking space and going around and around. So parking spaces are becoming smart. They're using GIS to communicate with citizens, and it's making a difference. In the planning for our future, GIS is increasingly being used to design urban expansion, to visualize what we have, to do evaluation of alternatives for creating smarter cities, but also greener cities, richer cities, and also doing regional planning and regional coordination. And your work, I'm talking about the generic U, and also in the case of the Australian Atlas of Health Variation, the specific U is helping us make a healthier world. It's helping us not only understand patterns of health, but also social and demographic variations, where there's income equality or vulnerable populations or disparity in healthcare access or even school access. In the world of public safety, GIS is helping us make our cities and our countries more secure. Here in Queensland, for example, the police vehicle tracking is allowing police to be notified and more responsive to events. GIS is helping us in the space-time analytics in the lower center, showing patterns of space-time behavior of criminal acts. And the sort of horrific things that are going in Syria, it gives us a spatial dimension to understanding and addressing it. Well, it's a difficult thing, but I would simply say GIS is helping us understand things more effectively. And my good friend Richard Saul Wurman often says, understanding should precede action. I like that idea. So your work is about creating understanding. And whether it's in those examples or in the whole world of using maps to further collaborate with citizens to engage them, we're seeing a kind of revolution through Web GIS and web services, connecting, informing, helping understanding, and helping ultimately action. GIS is beginning to become a platform for open data. People are sharing their data in response to mandates from government, but also interest from citizens. And I'll do some deep diving in this in a moment. But you can see here in Moreton Bay or Logan City Council, and Vic Roads, they're opening up the data so that people can download and access the data. There are now thousands and thousands of government agencies around the world, your colleagues in various places, who have simply accepted this as part of their work. My own feeling is that open data is not enough, and I'll show you what I think is enough in a moment. But certainly the trend to be able to connect with citizens through open data is alive and well and growing. Now I'd like to move to what Brett asked me to talk about as a central focus, which is GIS enabling a smarter world. You and I are living in a very interesting time, undergoing massive digital transformation. That's how we might describe it, or certainly the pundits are describing it that way, where virtually everything that moves and changes is being measured. Okay, I'm a little bit exaggerating, but it's moving in that direction. GPS, the sensor network, the Internet of Things. It should be very familiar to most of you. And maps and GIS are becoming essential instruments for us to understand all of that measurement. They're an interesting language because they're so well understood and people can get it right away. They not only get the content, but they get the content set in a contextual setting. I understand. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, you guys are the purveyors of this language. You're the ones who are actually building it. So context and content, two of my favorite words about geographic science and about your work. This is going to continue to exponentiate. It's going to become more pervasive. And you as professionals will be the people that build that language. You'll create elements of the language. You'll disseminate that language. You'll be the storytellers of what's going on in our planet. Well, at the very same time that this is occurring, you and I are living in a time which is increasingly challenged, calling on you to help. I mean, the issues of climate change and population and loss of nature, perhaps you don't notice it as much here in Australia, but as I travel around, I'm scared to death. They're not sustainable. I mean, the evidence for me is clear that if things keep going in the same direction, it ain't going to work out, ladies and gentlemen. It's just not. And it's a sobering thing when you open the newspaper and the newspaper seems like it's on fire with social conflicts or disasters or droughts or all of those issues that some of you are actually working on. And so I guess I've felt this for a long time, but especially this year, I'm really getting a sense that we're gonna have to collaborate and put it all together. And there isn't anybody else doing it other than you and your colleagues. The idea that we can actually take all our best science and all our best technology and all our best design thinking and all our best social institutions and really address this kind of stuff. Because otherwise your kids are not going to have a life like you had. That's clear. I mean, do you feel this way or is it just me? I mean, I'm living in California with a drought facing us every day, and yeah, well, that's the bad news. The good news is that your work, GIS, is not only a simple technology, but it's also part of a process and a framework for making a smarter city, for making a smarter country, for making a smarter world. That's sort of the plot that I want to share with you. I mean, we take all the data and integrate it from many sources. We put it together in a framework that can be visualized so we can understand and communicate. We analyze that data. We can do models. We can predict. We can predict what if we try this or that. And that gets cranked into planning and decision-making work, and then finally to action. So I want you to see your own work in a context of a process. So the hundreds of thousands of institutions that are mapping the little patch here or there, or mapping their theme, they're all actually playing a role in this sort of evolutionary process of bringing it together. They're doing that little cycle. And in concert, it's starting to have an effect. It's starting to change behavior. And that's what I really want you to think about. I want you to see your work in that context, because it's very important as we move to the next step of sharing and serving each other in society. Now, my work is about building tools. And this year, particularly this year, GIS is becoming smarter. I'll make the assertion that it's getting smarter. What the hell does he mean by getting smarter? Well, it's in part the integration of lots of things like big data analytics, faster machines, cloud, mobile, LiDAR, new kinds of data sets coming in, the space-time visualization and analysis, better modeling, and so on. It's doing this in the context of a Web GIS, which is different than a desktop GIS, although desktops are now part of the Web GIS. The Web GIS is different than a server GIS, although servers now being plugged into this new pattern of a Web GIS. And that's helping organizations take a massive step forward in making GIS an enterprise and ultimately a societal platform. Now, Smart GIS, let me give you some definitions. I think I have 5 or 6. First one is Smart GIS means real time. So the Internet of Things, measuring everything that moves and changes, is being spatialized. So we can take real-time traffic or real-time water measurements or air pollution or climate coming from different sensors and pipeline it into the very same layers or maps that we use commonly in GIS. And we can overlay them. We can look at relationships and patterns. This is the foundation for what people sometimes call smart cities or smart government. Second definition, Smart GIS connects everybody. I have an identity. I'm Jack. And I'm connected. Just like my identity in Facebook or social media or in an enterprise system, my identity gives me privileges. This is called a system of engagement as opposed to a system of record keeping. And that engagement means that individuals can work with institutions, can work with communities through identity. Very important element. Third, GIS, Smart GIS means more analytics. And we have traditionally been an analytic culture using traditional GIS tools, map overlay, modeling of various types. But 2 new things are emerging. One of them is the ability to analyze very, very large data sets, like all of the data for banking in all of Australia for the last 5 years. What are we contributing to that? The spatial dimension, or all of the traffic movement in Sydney for the last 5 years. Billions of observation points. What can we gain from that? New insights about how the dynamics of traffic work. The connected car, the smart roads. So this is pretty amazing stuff. And then a whole new world of exploratory spatial analysis, and we're going to see some of that demonstrated later. But it's the idea that I can sit down at a screen without any knowledge of spatial and just start playing with maps and overlaying maps and inquiring and doing charts and graphs and creating understanding. Not the guy down at the end of the hall, not some of you who are dependent upon, but this is like opening up and democratizing access to data, allowing sort of self-help, or not self-help, but help yourself. Not self-help, but help yourself access to GIS and exploring the digital geography. I mean, there was early explorers that, explored across Western Australia 200 years ago, and they told stories. This is the same kind of exploration, but in a digital frame, opening up everything to everyone. Smart GIS also means integrating everything. Here we see these 3 kinds of information systems. 1, system of record. Many of you maintain systems of record, whether it's geologic data or water data or cadastral data or planning data. You're transactionally maintaining the systems of record. Second, systems of engagement. This is about identity. And through identity, I can integrate access to systems of record in one system using web services. And third, systems of insight. This means we bring together different parts of the organization doing different kinds of activities on a single integrated information stack, not separate sorts of technologies, not a BI for, not business intelligence for one thing and operational management in the back door for another thing and social media for another thing. No, one integrated Web GIS platform. And this will help organizations come together. It'll help them understand and collaborate right across their organizations. And over time, As this opens up, it'll mean society will have exactly the same rich, multidimensional data sharing. More about that in a minute. These are a few little examples of smart applications that are starting to pop up. On the left is one done by my government, the US Geologic Survey. It's earthquake alerting. So when an earthquake happens, maybe 500 miles away or 200 miles away, it takes a while for the actual earth to shake by me. But this alerts me and says, Jack, get under the table, run outdoors. Might give me 15 or 30 seconds before it really hits me. This kind of smart, real-time messaging, alerting, will become pervasive. The one on the center is one of my favorite. NOAA in my country are the people that forecast weather, rainfall specifically. And every 5 days, 10 days, 15 days out, they can tell me there's going to be rainfall, falling in Sydney or falling in Melbourne in 10 days, about an inch or 2 or 3 or more. Well, they've taken another step. Now they're modeling dropping the rain on top of the digital terrain and simulating, forecasting when the flood's going to hit a particular segment. So we can say, about 5 days from now, get the hell out of that floodplain because it's going to hit you. So imagine what this means. Systematic, not a map service, but a model service. And this, by the way, is running live right now in the United States for the whole country. It just gives you a glimmer of the kind of online web analytics services that are going to be happening. And the one on the far right is one called community engagement. These are social media tweets in the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts. So the city puts out a proposal for a new urban development, and the community gives them back a service through tweets, and they can measure the positive, or what's the community saying about this proposal. This is like a step in the direction of community engagement. These are all built on this pattern of a Web GIS, services as opposed to tools and data. Fifth definition is cities that are smart will use GIS as a platform for doing planning, doing geodesign. We see this in Singapore already, where they're laying out proposed development and then quickly evaluating the consequences, the visual consequences of a proposed development, but also the consequences of a proposed development on traffic or on sewer or on water usage. So the way the planners develop things, they design different alternatives. Let's try this alternative and that alternative, and then you have to evaluate it. So this notion of Web GIS, which is being hydrated by different distributed servers and services of content, I can actually begin to do analytics and quick evaluations in order to make smarter decisions. And that's a real thing. This isn't just some concept. No, this is actually starting to happen. Geodesign is starting to become alive, both in 2D as well as 3D. The sixth definition of smart GIS involves a new idea. So some of you and some of my old friends here know I've been at this a long time. GIS started as a tool for doing project work. And you would get all the data together and you'd do a project, you'd throw the data away, and that was the end of the story. And it was very powerful to do that. That's what happened 47 years ago when I came down here. We did little projects here and there. Then people got the idea that you could bring all this data together and keep it and maintain it transactionally in a database and serve it out to multiple users. The sort of server environment occurred. We would really imagine that for a whole department. And then later, multiple departments sharing services, a kind of enterprise GIS. So individual, department, enterprise. Now I want to talk about a new step, which is GIS for a whole community. Not just the departments or the government or the public or the private, but a community GIS. This is the idea where the city takes the data from the city and puts it out in the cloud. Not just open data. This is like the next step beyond just open data. it's the idea that the open data is available and people can download it and play around with it, but also open services and also GIS tools so that citizens can make their own maps, they can make their own story maps, they can combine maps, they can do mashups, they can share their own data with government data. And so could NGOs, a little neighborhood group or a conservation group or a banking group. They're actually using the power, this whole new simplification of GIS, power of a GIS for their own community use. And also this can go right into schools, K through 12 schools. More about that later. Or in Los Angeles, the mayor said, I want to give all our data to the startups. So in LA, we now have about 36 startups that are all built around services and GIS and APIs that are open and shared by the city. So they took the city's GIS and just simply replicated it out in the cloud with a server. Really cool. And people started using it. So they built this community GIS, the next stage, I think, in the evolution of this. And leaders are using it, the politicians are dialing in, using it, and you'll see some of the technology that enables it in a few minutes. Startups are using these, not data, but services to embed inside of their apps, and then they build these apps and they sell it back to the city. This is all done by the mayor of LA. He was the leader, but now it's being done in 6 other cities. It's just like, I think it's just going to explode out. So what do I mean by explode out? I explained this idea of individuals GIS or enterprise or organizational GIS is quite a natural evolution using web services as the platform. And where that's going to go, I think, is that different organizations will start to serve each other. I was sharing with some folks this morning, this first started gravitating like this is really going to happen. Last year, I was in the City of Los Angeles Public Works Department, and there was a young man there working on a workstation, editing some water lines. And, okay, he's editing some water lines. So there's a parcel map behind the water lines. And, you know, and the City of Los Angeles has a long history of having multiple copies of a parcel map. You guys don't have that down here. But there, you know, there was the engineer's parcel map and the surveyor's parcel map and the, you know, and they're always just mad at each other. So I said, I just happened to ask him, what parcel map are you using for the city? He said, I'm not using the city parcel map. I'm using the county parcel map. And by the way, they've been spending millions of dollars a year on this damn parcel soap opera for many years. He says, no, I'm using the parcel map from the county, where there's 2.5 million parcels, and it's updated about 150 times a day. And he's reading in this web map service behind his water line, and he's editing. So what happened to the city map? Well, we all just decided to use the county map as a service. I mean, it's pretty, maybe you guys don't like that idea, but this is pretty neat. And so I started to realize this is going to happen, you know, with base maps, with imagery. There'll be shared services. The logical organizations will figure it out. They'll become a nervous system for the planet through shared services, image services, real-time traffic services, and people will build these relationships. I mean, yesterday, Waze, you know, the people that do the Waze, they just announced a new relationship with any GIS user. They'll give you free traffic Waze service if you give them the road closures. And man, that's just going to go. So people have dreamed about this idea of an NSDI for many years. What I'm simply saying is this is just going to show up on our screen, just like email did, or the internet itself. People will just start doing it and leveraging it. So I'll conclude this first few minutes of talk and then go into something technical by simply asserting to you that we've never been so capable of being able to share our data and use each other's data and actually do geo-design and action and take it to creating a smarter future. So this is why I'm a little hopeful this year, much more hopeful than I've been in years, that actually science will show up on everybody's screen as a foundation for making better decisions about our future. And I also want to just say, especially to you guys, because you're the people that really do things, now's the time to begin to work with this stuff. Look at the challenges that we're facing, transform your organizations incrementally. I'm not saying blowing anything up, but start to explore these services model, and I know some of you already are, and then be creative. Start configuring these services to take this next step. Open up, share services across organizations, and build cool apps that design a better future. So in the remaining couple of minutes, I'll simply share a little bit about what we're working on, which are basic tools that enable your work. And this gets right into the engineering space. We're 6 weeks away from a huge release of our technology. We've been working on it for about 5 years, really. If you count it all up, it's about $1.5 billion of investment. You're all going to get it. There's nothing new to buy. It just will be an improvement for what's going on. And it is just sort of the same story. It's a platform, a complete Web GIS platform that has servers and portal and apps and desktops integrated as a complete system. Now, when you buy an iPhone, I think I don't have one with me. When you buy an iPhone these days, it's not just a phone, it's connected into a service. So there's music, there's cloud, there's a whole bunch of parts to it. You know what I'm trying to get across here? You buy into the Apple ecosystem, and it's a little proprietary, but the whole idea is that it's not just pieces. It's a complete system. So that's what we had in mind with ArcGIS, the idea that you can get a desktop, but you get the cloud with it. You get the cloud, you get the apps with it. It's all just one integrated ecosystem of tools. And also the big design at 10.5 is that you can deploy it completely in your own infrastructure or networks, but you can also completely implement it in a cloud, including the desktop with virtualized desktops. So what is the big change that's occurring? These are a list of things. I'll go through them very quickly. We're moving from just supporting client server to supporting web services and apps. From standalone desktop to a connected desktop. So I can work in my desktop and I can upload and create services and hydrate my desktop with services. And I can not just focus on data models, although that's important, but also focus on making cool web maps and sharing them. From static data to real-time data, from single servers to whole clusters of servers that bring data in to do my work. From building my own custom apps to the idea of just simply configuring apps and load and go, speeding things up, saving money. From being proprietary in my data, if you choose, to being open data with open services, to just doing 2D to doing 3D natively, to integrating imagery into everything I do, from not just static analytics, but space-time analytics. And finally, start using and leveraging the computer to make my maps instead of just doing traditional digital cartography. And in this release, a lot of work has been done to ensure this is an open platform by adhering closely to standards, also integrating our technology directly with a lot of other vendors like Adobe and Autodesk and others, and then opening up the hood of our tools with open APIs, open sourcing a lot of our software, and having open access to data if you choose to do this. What are the capabilities that are in this box? A lot of things. Very quickly, automating the mapping function for self-service mapping. We call it smart mapping, and more 3D everywhere. Vector tiles everywhere. New analytic tools that integrate space-time analytics, things like EBK, regression analysis and prediction modeling, just becoming another function. Better integration with R, the open source statistical tools, and then working on this raster and vector big data processing. That's going to open up, that's going to allow digital exploration of geography in new ways. Everything becomes 3D. And new apps that are just free apps like the ArcGIS Earth, like Google Earth, you can fly around, harmonize, overlay, mash up data from multiple services. Also, the server 3D services means that I can serve out my content through browsers so that 100,000 citizens can just use a browser and fly around and look at different sorts of things, sort of opening up and democratizing access to the data. Support for very large point clouds like 10,000, 10 billion, 50 billion point cloud data sets that I can analyze and visualize and work with. These are seemingly little additional things, but no, they're massive in the underpinning. And these are not with new tools, they're just integrated into your existing tools. The further integration of high-performance image processing right inside of the desktop and servers with hundreds of tools. And also the cute one here is the drone to map, where I can buy a little cheap drone. We'll see it demonstrated here later today. I think they'll fly it around in the auditorium, take photos, hundreds of photos, automatically create ortho photos, and then serve it out on the web for fires or disaster or that kind of thing. And here we're not talking about junky precision, we're talking about 2-centimeter tested precision. So that's going to be disruptive in the whole world of data collection. And then the app revolution is occurring with new field apps, new office apps, new community apps for things like crowdsourcing. Last week we announced a major partnership with Microsoft for Power BI, so all of our maps are now going to be fueling the Power BI users like maps for Microsoft Office does now. New field data collection and automation of things like navigation or workforce in the field. These are powerful new tools as well. You getting sick of me rambling on about feature functions? It's okay. Well, I'm showing you just a small smidget of the whole picture. The favorite one for me, frankly, the last one and the favorite one for me is this notion of ArcGIS replication. So in the world of distributed GIS, we can have a server here, a server there, a server there. And each of it at 10.5 has its own little portal. Here's me, here's the content I have, web maps are these, here's the items that so portal gets fully integrated in with server. It's just like one technology. But also, we have a new concept of portal of portals. So in many organizations, and there's distributed this department, that department, that department, I want to actually federate and copy the items and the services in one portal automatically. I don't have to do this all by hand. Automatically, every time there's something that happens in one department, automatically is federated into another department. So I have an enterprise solution, a portal of portals. And while I'm pretty excited about the technical aspect, I want you to think about what that means in terms of organizational transformation. It means a system of systems with multiple fingers into doing deep dives into the services that complicated organizations like New South Wales or the city of Melbourne have. All organizations have this. They have their own little specializations, and they have, in the science world, it's their own little ints, or their own little ologies, zoology, sociology, climatology, archaeology, all these divisions of how we approach our world can be unified through services, through this interesting technology. And the big plot, of course, is that's all behind the firewall. Bringing the world together, bringing the city together, so we can approach cross-cutting problem solving. But then watch what happens at the top. I can replicate that and make copies of what I choose to for open access for citizens, so they get engaged. So solving a city's problems isn't going to happen by just the bureaucracy. It's going to happen by creativity and startups and involvement, everybody playing together. So this vision of a community GIS is sort of like a natural evolution in the nervous system. It's going to be really cool. So I encourage you guys to look at that. We got lots of things on the agenda. As I mentioned, 6 weeks from now we'll be releasing this, and then we got ongoing agenda beyond that, and we'll be happy to talk with you about what you find as missing, because we got to work on the next gap. It's always filling the next gap, but we're pretty excited about it. Esri continues to be strong and healthy. I want to just share that with you. Philosophically, we continue to focus on your needs. We are not a public company or stockholder company. We often think of you as our stockholders, so we like lots of feedback from you, and every time I invite that, I get a lot of trashy email, but it's all right. We are strong and growing. We continue our engineering and science focus, but we're also working on, just like you, trying to make a difference with our tools outside of our normal organization. And we do this with a lot of work in conservation. We support about 11,000 NGOs with free software in the conservation and humanitarian area. We don't do that just because we like conservation, although that's pretty important to us. It also is because we can engage with those organizations and make them part of your community. And that really is very empowering. The last thing I'd say that we're very active is education. And for many years, decades really, we've gotten our software into universities. It's really helped all of our users with young trainees and so on coming out and help science, helped us understand geography better. But in the last few years, we've been putting our same software into schools, K through 12 schools. So in the United States, thanks to a collaboration with our government, we now have ArcGIS Online and virtually available to every K through 12 school in the country. And there are thousands of classrooms where little kids are playing with ArcGIS Online, doing mashups, doing analytics in their own community. This is really, really cool. Do you like this idea? So how would you like to do it in Australia, where we would give free cloud support and free software to every K through 12 school here? Is this a good idea for you? So, Brett, where are you? We're going to do this. So the trick, however, in doing this is mentoring. So that really requires our users to adopt a school or adopt a teacher and give a little bit of introductory training. We have now out-of-the-box curriculum, core curriculum for STEM, project-based learning, and also learning in history and learning in all the different fields. So if you're willing to make some commitment on your side, sometimes that means sharing data, but mostly it means going to a classroom and adopting it and getting on with it. I'd be very pleased to support you. Now, let me close with this couple of phrases. I've tried to assert that geography, the science of our world, and mapping and GIS have never been so important. And I believe that, and I express it in my life, and I know that many of you co-believe it and have been pushing it. It's, I think, going to be the language of the future to understand our world and also change behavior. This is a big thing, actually. With the digital transformation going on, everybody talks about it, you, especially you, will be the people that actually bring that to life as it takes the next big giant step in enterprises as well as in society itself. GIS is getting smarter. I showed you some evidence of that, and you'll see it more in the demonstrations this afternoon. It's going to become more real-time, new analytics that allow the data to be democratized and analyzed in various ways. But this science and this technology are simply not enough. Just like GIS, when it was first birthed, were not enough. It took really you being interested, crafting solutions for your organizations, driving it home with real information products, creating a smarter and clearly more sustainable world. At the beginning of the session, there was a little video shown. Remember that video? At the end, E.O. Wilson, who's probably the most famous ecologist, talked about we need to get on with mapping our world. He didn't mean about mapping. He talked about really geographic analysis and visualizing and understanding and planning the future of our planet. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming today and also giving me this chance to share with you what I think the future is about. Thank you. Thank you very much.